Hey there, Twisters. Wanted to make a rapid reaction to the Colorado Avalanche knocking off the Winnipeg Jets in Game 5 by a score of 6-3. So the Jets are out. The Avalanche are on to the second round. They'll play the winner of the Dallas Stars versus the Vegas Golden Knights. But we're focusing on the Winnipeg Jets for this specific video because here's a team that absolutely owned the Avs in the regular season, outscoring them 17-4 in their 3 games. I know that 2 of them were back in December. Here's a team that was looking good down the stretch. Of course, they add Tyler Toffoli, they add Sean Monahan. Their defense has the fewest goals against in the NHL, and it's not just Hellebuck, right? Brossoit is also looking good too, and this team totally folds in what might be the most disappointing first round performance. I know a lot of people could say the Capitals, but we weren't even expecting them to put up too much of a fight against the New York Rangers. But here, I had the Jets actually winning the Stanley Cup at the start of these playoffs. Now, to my credit, somewhat, I did have the Avs actually as my Stanley Cup champion at the beginning of this season, but just looking at that matchup and looking at the way the rosters were composed, and I said, all right, well, usually I pick the team that has the better goaltending. Well, guess what, Connor Hellebuck? You just got by Alexander Georgiev and the Avalanche. The Avs actually scored 5 goals or more in every single contest. They had no solution, the Jets did, for Arturi Lenkinen and also Val Nichushkin. Those guys scored in every single game. Nichushkin now with 7 goals in the playoffs, Lenkinen with 5 of his own. Nathan MacKinnon, he was certainly a key contributor to the Avs, but he wasn't he didn't have to carry the team on his back like I thought he would against a team that had their number. And it wasn't just the top 6 for the Avs that were a threat to the Jets all series long. You saw Yakov Trenin score a goal in Game 5. Ross Colton was certainly all over the ice and contributed for Colorado. Middlestat turned it on a fair bit as well. Cale Makar from the backside. And so really the Jets just got exposed in a number of ways, especially on the power play. And just situationally, they were outclassed by an Avalanche team that still returns a fair amount of players from the 2022 Stanley Cup run. So of course we had that great shootout, 7-6 in Game 1. But then after that, right, the Jets have a lead in Game 2. They lose it on 2 separate occasions. They give up 5 unanswered goals with their leaky penalty kill in Game 3. Then their penalty kill falls apart in Game 4. And then in this one here, there were 2 instances in which they scored, and then 2 minutes later, the Avs are back on the board. You saw that Neil Pionk own goal later in the second period. I thought that was kind of an omen that this series was in the books. And yeah, I mean, here you are with Connor Hellebuck, who signed that fat extension in the offseason, and even though he's a Vezina Trophy finalist, that's just a regular season award. It doesn't have anything to do with the playoffs. He's still a fantastic goaltender, but you didn't see him making that many of those key saves that you need to keep your team in the game, even if it's high scoring, right? You can let in 3 or 4 goals in today's NHL and still make some key saves to help your team secure a victory. And on the Avs side of things, Georgiev was able to make those saves here and there, and it's kind of like what they did in 2022. They didn't have elite goaltending per se with Kemper and Francouz, but it was a good tandem. They kept their teams in the game, and they were able to get that from Alexander Georgiev, even though a lot of people weren't very confident in him, myself included, heading into this series. Now, going into this year, I wasn't super high on the Jets myself. They had, of course, retained Kevin Cheveldayoff and Rick Bowness, despite losing in the first round to the Golden Knights last year very unceremoniously, and then they decided to sign those extensions with Scheifele and Hellebuck, and I even kind of ripped into them when I made fun of every fan base and team earlier this season. But they were having a solid season overall. They were in the top 3 in that division. The Dubois trade actually worked out really well in favor for Winnipeg because we saw what Gabe Vilardi was able to contribute when he was healthy. And as I mentioned earlier, I thought that Winnipeg did a good job of augmenting their roster with good supporting players that didn't change the complexity of that group. You have somebody like Tyler Toffoli, who's won a Stanley Cup, been a key contributor in the playoffs in a couple of deep runs during his career. So of course, what do the Jets do going forward? They still will retain a big majority of their core, especially at forward, although Toffoli and Monahan will be unrestricted free agents. They do have a couple of defensemen coming off the books technically in the likes of Dylan DeMello and Brendan Dillon, who did miss tonight's Game 5. You also have to consider Laurent Brossoit, who was at just a $1.75 million cap hit and had a really good season behind Connor Hellebuck. But since on paper at least the Jets are going to return most of their big guys up front heading into this next year, is it really going to take for them to maybe look for a different guy behind the bench, or perhaps somebody else to build this roster somewhat differently and replace Kevin Cheveldayoff? Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts about that. Again, I am just utterly shocked that this is how they've bowed out. It wasn't because they couldn't find some offense, it's because they were just blowing the lead when they had the chance there. Their penalty kill just was in absolute shambles against a team that they had, again, dominated in the regular season matchup. And what I thought was an overall well-composed roster that was built for success in the playoffs has now completely folded like a lawn chair. And meanwhile, the Avs can rest up a little bit before facing either the Stars or the Golden Knights in the second round. And let me know your thoughts on who you think they would match up better against. Anyway, Twisters, we'll have all sorts of videos and streams throughout the playoffs, so if you're into that kind of thing, you know what to do. Also, you can buy some Twisted Wrister Hockey merchandise where you can find my logo recolored for every team out there and some defunct teams, so like the Quebec Nordiques or the Minnesota North Stars, for example. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Hit the thumbs up and stick around for more content. I'm Nick, and I'll catch you Twisters later. Ciao.